You can see buildings. It's all there. And then a few weeks ago, actually, it was around my birthday, I got to thinking, geez, I wonder if there's anything else. And I pulled out a book out of my library, and I went to that great book place in Portland a few years ago and cleaned them out of every NASA book they had. And a lot of them were printed way back in the 70s, which is before NASA got real talented with their airbrush. And I got this book called SP-246, and it's photos of Apollo 8, 10, and 11. It was published in 1971, and this just happened like in December. I started putting these photos on the scanner and looking at them, and it was just amazing. There is a city. I mean, there's a spaceport, what looks like a spaceport. There's tubes, there's roads, there's vegetation, there's lights. I mean, it's all right there. So I sent this one clip, or this one photo of 2209 to Beth and Ron, and they looked at it, and they said, this is absolutely amazing. So from there, I started clipping more photos, and we found more and more stuff, and that's how it all happened. And those photos are the ones that you have on your website.
How do we know, John, if these mining operations are ours and not extraterrestrial events?
Well, I'm sure they're part extraterrestrial. We couldn't have possibly put that massive a mining operation together in 40 years. I mean, we could have. I don't think we did. Somebody else is up there. Somebody else built all those buildings. There's no possible way we could have done that.
You think we just kind of inherited them?
Yeah, I think we work with them up there. Now, I don't know who that is up there, but they're the ones that built all that, and we're doing mining. Now, the reason I know that we're involved is several years ago, I ran into a real honest-to-gosh government insider. He's dead now, but he told me three things, and one was that we had been going to the moon since 1962, that the population of Mars was 600 million, and they looked just like us, and the other thing was that he had worked on a piece of mining equipment that was to go to the moon. He said, John, we built this thing down in Alabama, way out in the nowhere. He said, it was so enormous. He said, when we finished the project, he said, I actually rented a little airplane. He said, I'm a private pilot, and flew around this piece of equipment just to get an idea of how big it was. And I said, geez, that's fantastic. How did they get it to the moon?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know. And that's, the deal in compartmentalization. You get to know a little bit of the program, but you don't get to know the whole thing. So he knew a little bit, but he didn't know the whole thing.
What an incredible...
Now, if you ask where the operations are from now and how they keep them so secret, I think it's Antarctica. And if anybody wants to check Google search words, I recommend two things. One is moon mining. You're going to be absolutely stunned at how much there is. I think there's 1,500,000 hits on moon mining, and space law and Clementine. Just Google those things and see how much there is.
A couple of these pictures you sent us, specifically the crater Kepler, and then you look at the airbrushed version. It looks like two different craters. Absolutely. I mean, the structures are all gone.
Yeah, like I said, NASA didn't get proficient with their airbrush till about 1972-73, and they went back and got all these pictures. But those of us who got the early pictures have the good stuff. And on Kepler, you'll see the Lunar Orbiter 3-162 picture. I mean, there's obviously stuff on that crater. There's obviously a strip mine there. There's obviously buildings there. And then you go to the Apollo 12 photo that was taken several years later, and it's absolutely clean. There isn't a trace of anything.
Well, they came down and took all the equipment away. But
yeah.
You're right. It is absolutely incredible. Now, how do you know, though, in some cases, we're not looking at, tricks of light or just different images when you look at this?
Well, take a look at that yourself. I mean, there's buildings on the rim, and then there's not buildings there. Some of the pictures are great. As a matter of fact, did you see the one of of Aristarchus? We're always told that Aristarchus is the brightest spot on the moon. We can see it, and any image you can buy or purchase or moon pictures, it's always just a white blob. And so we had a guy take a 10-inch telescope and take a picture for us, and you can see it right in those pictures that we've got on your website. It's a beautiful structure, and it looks exactly like a nuclear reactor to me. It's probably a fission reactor. There's no doubt about it. You can see the arches. You can see the blue glow, and the blue glow comes from when radiation hits molecules of air. And now you're going to say, wait a minute, there's no air on the moon. Well, as a matter of fact, the moon has a breathable atmosphere, and it has gravity 65% of what's on Earth. So, it has it has all of that.
And it looks like it's got some arches alongside of it.
Yeah. And then you look at the next picture. I think that Lex got it up there. Look at that picture that Clementine
I'm
took
looking
in
at that right now.
1994. Can you imagine that we got a better picture of Aristarchus from a 10-inch telescope than Clementine did with a $100 million satellite? That's great. I love it.
It doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
It doesn't.
So all this has been going on, you think, right under our noses for 40 years, John?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, somebody pulled up some stuff off the internet that my father was involved in the middle 50s with antigrav, and there's a lot of stuff. If you Google Bill Lear or William Powell Lear antigrav, he was there doing it. He was right in the middle of it. As a matter of fact, there's a 3-minute clip floating around that was originally in David Hatcher Childress video. My dad lecturing on UFOs at the Bonson Laboratories. And he's there at a blackboard. He's got a saucer there drawn on it, and he's describing how it works. The film is silent, but you can see generally what he's doing. Interspaced with the pictures of him are technicians working in laboratories with balsa wood and paper UFOs. They're obviously trying to make what was the beginning of our efforts. I think that all came to a culmination in 1959. We made the craft. We may have had some help, but anyway, our first trip to the moon in antigrav was 1962. Now, let me tell you this. And you say, well, antigrav, we don't hear very much about it. And I say, that's right. You don't hear one word about it. You don't see Aviation Week in Space Technology putting, we're working on antigrav, and here's the experiments. Nothing, not one single word. And the reason is they already perfected it, and they don't want anybody talking about it.
I want to get your reaction, Sean, about this talk about why we never technically went back to the moon. Why did it seem to end publicly, yet we continued going back then?
We were already there. That was all a cover. Those guys, the Apollo astronauts, the first guys to set on it, they weren't the first guys. That was all just a cover program so that nobody would know about the real program. Now, why they wanted to keep the real program a secret, I don't know. But you can ask, if the listeners want to email Michael Griffin, NASA administrator, they're welcome to do so and say, hey, how come this way? John Lear's got some pretty good evidence here that we're already on the moon and we're mining up there. What's the deal? You should know. You're the administrator.
What are they mining for, John?
That is a good question. What we think that they're mining for is helium-3, and helium-3 would be an excellent power source if we can get fusion together.
That could power the planet for years.
Yes.
Stay with us, John. We'll be back with you in just a moment on coasttocoastam.com. Our special guest tonight, John Lear. And again, if you have a computer, I hope you do by now, get up to the coasttocoastam.com website, look at the assortment of photographs he has sent us. Take a look at them, see what you see. We'll be back. And our very special guest tonight, John Lear, as we talk about mining operations, structures on the moon. It was my late aunt, Shafika Corregula, who knew Ingo Swann. And Ingo, through his remote viewing and in his book, Penetration, said that there were indeed structures on the far side of the moon. It's an incredible story. We'll be back with more with John Lear on Coast to Coast AM. I'm afraid, John, you've got a lot of people staying up late tonight. Poor Liz in Ann Arbor, Michigan says, George, I'm a college student. I've got to get to bed. I have to stay up and listen to this whole show. It's going all around the country. John, let's talk a little bit more about the moon, and I want to get into some other things with you. The Gary McKinnon